'Tis the season for holiday travel, and with Amtrak, visiting friends and family has never been easier or more comfortable. With no middle seats, extra leg room, and spacious seating, you and the entire family can relax the whole way there. So skip the bumper-to-bumper traffic or crowded airports and experience the gift of traveling comfortably aboard Amtrak this holiday season. Book early and save at Amtrak.com. Restrictions may apply.
If you're always on the go, keep going with Synergy Supreme Plus Premium Gas from Exxon and Mobil stations. It helps keep engines 2 times cleaner for better mileage, which means more time on the road and less time making pit stops along the way. Give our best fuel a try and see how far it takes you. Go on, fill up with Synergy Supreme Plus Premium Gas at Exxon and Mobil stations. Synergy Supreme Plus Premium Gas compared to Synergy Regular Gas and port fuel injected engines. Actual benefits based on continuous use may vary.
Pull the strings, you do whatever we want. You get in line for hours and hours. You can't complain, cause we got the power. You're a puppet fan, puppet fan.
In 2010, Live Nation and Ticketmaster joined forces and the most evil group in music was born. To break them up, go to fanfairnesscoalition.org. Take action for fair ticketing. Paid for by Fan Fairness Coalition.
I'm Jason Pack, and this is Disorder, a podcast where we try to put our finger on the salient dynamics in our mad, 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 mad world. And today we have a Thanksgiving Day bonus episode for you outside of our usual schedule. There's so much information out there about what's happening in Israel-Palestine, but yet really so little information about what the big picture geostrategic context of this conflict is. Not only how we got to here, but what are the ramifications that this is having elsewhere, and how does this feed into larger dynamics like with China or with NATO? So to do that really big picture contextualization, I'm very thankful to be joined by Alessandro Politi. Alessandro is the director of the NATO Defense College Foundation based in Rome. The NDCF is an impactful NGO which is actually directly referenced in an annex to the NATO Charter, the only NGO mentioned directly in an annex to the NATO Charter. And that is one of the many reasons that I'm proud to be the only senior analyst there. So in this episode, my colleague Alessandro and I are going to discuss what role does NATO have in the Middle East? What can Europe do in the Israel-Hamas war that, say, America or the Arab states can't do? Alessandro has also recently come back from Taiwan. We're going to hear how that was. He's going to share with us his thoughts about how the Ukraine and Gaza war might act as a detonator for larger US and China tensions. So this may seem very quaint to non-American listeners, but it really makes sense to me to say what I'm thankful for on this Thanksgiving episode. Firstly, with the wars going on in Israel and Gaza and in Ukraine, we should all be thankful for whatever stability and comfort we have in our lives, because they may seem disordered, but they are so much less disordered than what other people are experiencing in this mad, 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 mad world. And I am personally really thankful for the opportunity to bring together my 20 plus years of experiences in the Middle East and try to do something to contribute. You know, I do have this sense of powerlessness and voicelessness because, what can I do with the hostages being kept in Gaza and the bombing of innocent civilians and in hospitals and elsewhere in Gaza? But I am thankful to have a voice, and you listeners and this program help to make that voice more impactful. So I just want to share with you how thankful I really am and how much we're already succeeding. We have become one of the top 15 podcasts in the United Kingdom. Nothing can make an American more chuffed than that. So that's what I'm going to be thankful for at my festivities this evening. And of course, just how humbled I am relative to events in Gaza and Ukraine those who are fighting on the front lines to keep us all safe. Please keep it up. And those families who've suffered, you are in our hearts and prayers. Alessandro, bello parlare con te. Really great to have you on Disorder. To start, your personal story has actually been very impactful on your career trajectory. Could you tell listeners a little bit about your upbringing and your family?
I was born in Germany. My mother was German. My father was Italian. I'm a son of two Axis parents. My father was a duly member of the National Fascist Party. My mother was a Catholic Boy Scout enrolled in the Bund Deutsche Mädel, so the feminine equivalent of the Hitlerjugend. But her father, after 1 year, took her out. So I got a very, very close feeling, not so much explained. That generation didn't talk very much about the war, about the Holocaust, about the hard edge of European history and wars. So I decided to study wars. I tried very much to understand, politics, wars, strategies, global issues and regional issues. And then I came to a conclusion that I share with many Israeli generals and directors of intelligence. You have really to work for peace.
We're talking in early November 2023, and the Israel-Hamas war is boiling. What role do you think Europe and NATO should be playing in trying to bring this conflict to a peaceful conclusion?
We should start reasoning more like Palestinians and Israelis instead of reasoning like Europeans about the issue. So the first thing we have to help, and Italy can do it, is to find every possible occasion to de-escalate the tension. So it's very difficult to act on Tel Aviv right now for obvious reasons. But politics is not for now immediately, it's across time. The problem is, how do you manage two nations on the same territory? Netanyahu has its own political merits and its own weak spots, and he thought that he could, make like Romans, which is an old recipe, divide et impera, divide and conquer, playing Hamas against the Palestinian Authority. Well, this has been exposed very clearly by the Israeli press in a very intense way. So I think that the solutions that have been adopted until now don't work. And we must find, a way where people can finally live decently, free from fear, in peace. This needs compromise, but I have a light of hope. If we as, international community, and I use this word very sparingly, were able to get out from a long war like the two world wars, in some, reasonably decent way, there is hope also for this conflict.
What about the role of NATO? Can NATO have a role to play, or is this just not a NATO concern?
NATO is very interested in the conflict because it is within its area. It's not within the borders of the alliance. But Israel is a partner of NATO. Jordan is a partner of NATO, and so on. Egypt is a partner of NATO. So in this sense, it is really concerned. But generally, NATO doesn't get directly into these things, as it didn't go directly when the Turks and the Russians were squarely, facing themselves in Syria.
I look at NATO as the coordinator-in-chief. NATO is ideally suited to doing behind-the-scenes coordination and information sharing. And really, NATO is the best forum to get allies on the same page. But it doesn't always work, and it certainly doesn't work in situations like this current Israel-Hamas war. And we talk about orderers and disorderers on this podcast. So could you tell us the kind of country or kind of leader who, when a NATO Mediterranean policy initiative reaches out and says, hey, can we coordinate with you about this? They say no. What's that kind of person? What are their motivations?
The mindset is very simple, and that's very provincial. Oh, that is not in my immediate area. That's down there. Let them sort it out. Sorry, security is indivisible. Since we are all allies and connected through a global superpower, yes, we should care what happens, in Cyprus or in Gaza. We should, because it's not something nice. It's not just diplomatic nicety. It's a shared interest that is very concrete. When you have the price of oil exploding and Mrs. Putin flaunting the sanctions because, you pay more even if I do smuggle it, that's serious. They should be concerned about that. But it seems in many cases, decision makers haven't the faintest idea about what is happening outside their decision room. It's something that strikes me a lot.
You're in a unique position, having worked for years on NATO and the Mediterranean and the Balkans, and seeing how developments in one part of the world or with one set of countries affect others. I may be blissfully ignorant of how developments with China, for example, are affecting the way in which the Hamas-Israel war is playing out, but I am aware that Iran might be emboldened because they think even if there's further Western sanctions because we gave arms to Hamas, we don't care because we can sell our oil to China, or we can get Belt and Road Initiative funding from China. Could you kind of more sketch how these things are interrelated?
The first thing that really makes us so connected, the world, is globalization itself. For Israel, Israel and Palestine are very sentiment charged. It's not useful, but it happens. The fact that the US is perceived as less present in the area, surely less present in the Gulf than in the Levant, and as you have seen, Biden has gone to Israel for very good reasons, among which electoral ones, I've no illusions about that, gives local powers, no matter if they are benign or malign, the already long-standing idea that they have to do by themselves. And they do. Turkey is one case, the Emirates, Saudi Arabia. We got a very interesting conference in Rome on the 6th of October on NATO as a foundation. And we got a prominent Saudi scholar saying, look, we don't want to change the US for something else. But if you Europeans want to be serious with us, well, talk is not enough. Guarantees are important.
That's a very important point, which is that the EU has long talked about having an independent deterrence capacity, an independent and unified military, but it hasn't done it. It's relied on the American defense umbrella. But do you see that Saudi scholar touching on something? Is there, because of a fear of a second Trump term or other developments, going to be a more integrated, more holistic European defense approach?
As a European, I've seen, first of all, Europe started vaguely working on defense in 1994. Now, I think Europeans start to understand, no matter what the US say, that they must be more concerned about their conventional deterrence vis-à-vis Russia. You can't just have a hodgepodge conventional array against a Russia that in 10 years could recover from the beating it got in Ukraine. If people dream about a European army, they just have to look at the Ukrainian army today. It is a logistic mess. You can't simply go being interoperable. You must be standardized.
I don't know that our listeners will understand the difference between interoperable and standardized. Could you quickly explain that?
Well, interoperable means that at least on certain essential things, your communication and your weapon systems are compatible. If I have a howitzer, it must have the same caliber and should fire different ammunitions from different countries. I have 5 types of tanks. Yes, they fire the same ammunition, but there are 5 logistic lines for that tank. It's a matter of survival.
You raised 3 or 4 critical points here. One is the question of international coordination. We are always talking about the fact that our complex, globalized world with multidimensional interlinking challenges such as climate, defense, artificial intelligence, requires more international coordination. And yet we find ourselves at a moment where there is less international coordination than there had been previously. Now let's jump back to Israel-Palestine and Saudi and Iran. America has been the indispensable nation in many arenas, but in no arena more so than in security guarantees for Israel. But might it be nice if the Europeans as an entity could counterbalance America either by offering certain security guarantees to different Palestinians, certain humanitarian commitments, or security relationships with Sunni Gulf nations against Iran, which are not tied to the overarching American connection to Israel? Tell us about that. Is that possible that a bribe that we could have to resolve this conflict is European nations giving security guarantees to, say, Saudi in exchange for the Saudis helping Israel with the Palestinians?
One of the lessons, I must say, which struck me regarding the Saudi-Iranian agreement was that in the end, local actors jumped the gun and took matters in their own hands.
This is a crucial point. One of the characteristics of the enduring disorder is that because there's no top table hegemon ordering all theaters, medium powers like Turkey and Iran are emboldened, and alternative powers like China and Russia, and in this case China, can do something like make a Saudi-Iran détente, which no one thought was possible.
They think really that even Palestinians need to take matters in their own hand. It is very difficult. They have to change a lot of ideas and prejudices one another. But if they don't do it, it's very difficult from outside to do anything. Yes, of course, you can give support in emergency. That's good, but it doesn't solve the problem. This commission, this European Commission, tried to be a geopolitical commission. But the European area of responsibility is something that, logistically goes from the Arctic till the equator for a good half of the Indian Ocean and the other half in the Atlantic Ocean, together with the US, of course. So Israel falls fully in that area of responsibility, but this is a political matter. It's not an operational matter. I think that Europe should have a distinct interest in taking these responsibilities more on them, knowing that in the end, if we are democracies, well, democracies need to have also the power to be credible when they do diplomacy in order to transmit somehow their values in a more decent and civilized, international affairs environment. But if we believe in these values, well, we must give us the means to make them more credible, not just on the economic side, but also on the, more sharp end of negotiations.
After the break, we're going to hear about if these conflicts going on and raging in the world right now are actually just smaller symptoms of a top table battle which is brewing between the West and China.
At Simply Safe Home Security, your safety is the only thing that matters. That's why you get 24/7 professional monitoring for less than $1 a day, because every home deserves to be protected. Right now, get 50% off the whole home security system named the best of 2023 by U.S. News and World Report. Visit simplysafe.com/Spotify to save big today. Advanced Home Security, 24/7 professional monitoring for less than $1 a day. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
You're the ticket servant, and I'm the ticket master. Give us all your money faster, faster.
In 2010, Live Nation and Ticketmaster joined forces and the most evil group in music was born. To break them up, go to fanfairnesscoalition.org. Take action for fair ticketing. Paid for by Fan Fairness Coalition.
Is your inbox overflowing with Black Friday deals? The deal you won't want to miss is Blinds.com's biggest event all year. Save up to 50% site-wide at the #1 online retailer of custom window treatments. Blinds.com is the better way to do Black Friday. Shop from home, get upfront pricing, no more pushy salespeople. No matter how many windows you have, installation is one low cost. Shop Blinds.com's Black Friday sale now. Get up to 50% off site-wide plus doorbusters. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
So, rather than the world facing one major conflict, we're now in a world where 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 major conflicts are going on. But you've made the interesting point to me that maybe all of these are risks of a larger top-table conflict between the West and China. Could you explain ways in which the Ukraine-Russia war or developments in Israel or civil wars in Yemen and Syria might lead into a larger conflict with China?
I would say that these conflicts and other conflicts could be, because it's not a given, a detonator. But the detonator is not the bomb. Surely the powder or the powder keg is, in the Pacific. It is in the dynamic between China and the US. But it is also in the end of an old world order. We have grown up during the Cold War, which I generally tend to call a Third World War, because it was cold for us in the Northern Hemisphere. Really not. Already across the Mediterranean, it was very hot. During that period, we externalized war like toxic waste. And of course, there are things that change. I understand very well, the US leadership, at least rhetorically, when they say, we are still indispensable, we must have the dominance, we must be the number ones. I understand that. It's part of life. At the same time, part of life is that other powers emerge. And before it was easy. Before you could do a war, it could be horrible, but you came out. Today you have nuclear weapons. This is something that not only complicates the calculus, but really makes the thing much more dangerous. We endured already 2 world wars.
You were just recently in Taiwan. It's a place that I'd love to go. I'm interested in my dumplings and my spicy Chinese food. I'm also very interested in my superconductor supply chains. Tell us about what it was like being there in Taiwan, and what did you come to understand about Taiwanese democracy and how it functions from being there?
The first thing that struck me a lot was the capability of Taiwanese generations to overcome a military dictatorial regime. Martial law was not abolished until 1986. The Taiwanese democracy, a full democracy, is very young. It remembered me very much West Berlin during the Cold War, in a different way, of course. It's not just a half city enclosed by the German Democratic Republic, but there is a sort of feeling.
The sense of being under siege.
The sense that you are under the shadow of a possible volcano, yes.
For sure. We can never fully empathize with the sense of fear and struggle and persecution that someone in a place like Taiwan or Israel or Gaza might feel. How do we find shared interests as a world where we can begin to use the fact that, say, the Chinese have a lot of issues with pollution, particularly in megacities like Shanghai, to form a constructive dialogue?
There is an article I published on the website of the foundation, the very short telegram concerning precisely, in this case, the US-China relationship. There are more common interests between these two countries than meets the eye.
100% agreed.
Now, of course, a normal Chinese politician would tell to me, why should I engage with a rebel province? And I would say, look, you want to achieve this reunification. Evidently, your government has had a problem in Hong Kong. Do you really think that you can be attractive if you continue that way? One nation, 2 systems was a brilliant formula. Unfortunately, it didn't live long enough to convince the Taiwanese. So probably cooperating on things, even, in an informal way. There is today, I think, 7% to be generous, of people in Taiwan that would really want a reunification with Beijing. The rest of the people don't want. So probably you have to try another approach.
Let's try to order the disorder together, Alessandro. You've touched on so many interesting points, ways in which conflicts in other parts of the world affect the Taiwan-China struggle, and ways in which Europe needs to be more united and coordinate better together to help America and to help a Western security approach to complicated issues like Ukraine and Israel-Palestine. If you were briefing an Italian policymaker, a NATO policymaker, what would you tell them? What are the low-hanging fruits of things that could be done differently, ways we could work with adversaries to help make a less dangerous world?
I would say political dialogue at different levels allows to, first of all, avoid misunderstandings, allows to ease tensions and to diffuse even propaganda campaigns. Dialogue is important, face-to-face is important, even to manage, an ongoing conflict. The other thing which is overarching, and I think here there is one global leader who got it, in my view, right. A leader morally responsible for 1.5 billion people like Pope Francis. You need to look at the world together. So the world cannot sustain consumerist societies. We have to find another way in order not to burn out our resources. This is, of course, very hard because it puts into question our Western way of life. And the third thing is, if I might say, to rebuild the West, because today there is no West. There are Wests. There is something much more important than NATO, and it is a transatlantic relationship, which is made of people, culture, debate, struggle for freedom within our societies, will to change, will to risk, will to be altruistic. Despite all cynicism we stand together after 2 world wars. And I think we should devote some energy instead of finger pointing, instead of looking systematically, at our failures and flaws. This, I think, is important.
Alessandro, we really look forward to having you back on the podcast because you have so much in your life story to share. I just wish that more people could learn from you so we would have less conflicts in this world and more people would be fighting for peace rather than for the eradication of their enemies, sadly.
Indeed.
Well, that's it for this week. If you too want to help order the disorder, you can tap follow right now so you'll be notified whenever an episode drops, especially for when we have these bonus episodes like this every once in a while. If you didn't follow us, you'd likely miss it. You can find us on social media by searching Disorder Show and read more about today's topic by visiting our show notes. Our producer is George McDonagh. Our executive producer is Neil Fearn. As always, thanks for listening, and I hope you have an orderly week.